Good morning. This is my first video in the series of 6 videos that I'll do on Operation Sindoor, one video in a day except on Sunday. And my 6 subjects, they are listed on the screen for the viewers to see. And the reason why I'm doing 5 videos based on my 5 observations of Operation Sindoor is because the observations, they are so diverse, covering modern warfare to global geopolitics, that I didn't want to club everything together. And in any case, I didn't want a single video which would be 2 hours long. And then I thought that if I take one observation at a time in a video, I'll be able to bring more clarity to the subject at hand, and clarity is what we all need. Now, my last video, the 6th one, that will be about my recent visit to Kashmir, where after many years I saw a mix of hope and despair amongst the people. I'll talk about that. Now, the only caveat in all my videos, for obvious reasons, will be that I'll be speaking more about the Pakistani side than about the Indian side. So let me start with my first observation in this video, which is that post Operation Sindoor, India and Pakistan today, they are closest to a hot war. A hot war means where both sides will bring all their capabilities, their own capabilities, and the capabilities in the case of Pakistan that it gets from China to a point to the battle space. That's a hot war, or what we call a full-fledged war. Now we know that Operation Sindoor has not ended in a ceasefire, a formal ceasefire between India and Pakistan, but Prime Minister Modi has said that there is a pause in Operation Sindoor. And what has been created after the pause is what we call the new normal, and the new normal is extremely dangerous. That means the next step from new normal is hot war. So this pause can be lifted by either side whenever either side wishes to lift the pause, and the next step, then they go to a hot war. The two sides fight a war. Now, as far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan in this period of pause has offered to have normal ties with India, where the Pakistani Prime Minister has said that Pakistan is willing to talk with India bilaterally, have normal relations, but 3 issues need to be spoken of, and they are Kashmir, trade, and water. Obviously, the Indian side is not interested in this, although the Chinese support the Pakistani Prime Minister's proposal. Now, as far as India is concerned, they want to talk on terrorism, but the problem with terrorism is that there is no universally accepted definition of terrorism. And second, what the Indian side wants is, it wants Pakistan occupied Kashmir back from Pakistan, which is absolutely impossible. So the things are stuck here. What this means is that for both sides, they will be reviewing now all that they have learnt, their observations of Operation Sindoor, and now they'll be filling up their operational gaps noticed during Operation Sindoor. That means war preparedness at an accelerated pace. Now, as far as Pakistan is concerned, to do that, they have elevated Army Chief Asim Munir to a 5-star rank of Field Marshal. Now, the Field Marshal rank doesn't get him any more pass than he already had as the Army Chief, but it indicates 2 things. One, that he's the man who will decide issues of war and peace with India, and the civil government in Pakistan has been rendered irrelevant on these issues. And the other is that he's the one who will now review and accelerate the preparedness for war against India. Now, when we look at review and preparedness, which is what I want to talk in this video, there are 7 subjects which will come up, and they are threats, platforms, capabilities, war concepts, training, finances, and how to do faster army mobilizations. I will touch upon briefly on all these subjects, trying to omit what I have already said before and concentrate or emphasize on something which I believe is important now. So threats have to be said again, because as far as Pakistan is concerned, the threat is well known. And as far as India is concerned, it is also known that India now faces a three-front threat. While China will not go to war with India, but if there is a war between India and Pakistan, China will accelerate its peacetime aggression on the line of actual control to make sure that the limited combat assets of the Indian Air Force, they get divided. Now the second front is Jammu and Kashmir, where the Indian Army will get divided, because as many experts say, this is a half front. This is actually more than one front, because at least in the last 10 years, the people of Jammu and Kashmir have been alienated. But this is a different story. So what we face is a full front here. And then as far as Pakistan is concerned, something we have seen in Sindoor, and I have been saying since 2019 that what you face against Pakistan is not Pakistan, but a one front reinforced threat, which is Pakistan and China together, without China without showing its hand. And that is what happened in Operation Sindoor. Next is platforms. Now platforms refers to the capabilities in the physical domains of air and land and sea. We are just restricting, I'm restricting myself to speaking of air and land. So we are talking about aircrafts and we are talking about tanks and guns. Now I have mentioned this in my last videos. I won't repeat them except emphasize on two assets which are absolutely critical. And the first is, now it is certain that Pakistan Air Force will get 40 aircraft from China, the J-35A, and the deliveries are expected to start as early as August this year, 2025. Now this is a big deal. It is a big deal because a fifth generation aircraft will be introduced between India and Pakistan, a fifth generation aircraft which has stealth and which can operate in a contested environment. This is the key thing. So it is an air superiority aircraft, works very well in a networked operations, and here is the key thing. It will have cyber and electronic warfare integrated in its attack profile. I will explain this in a while. So it's a big capability along with the platform. Now the other is, although there are reports that the Pakistani HQ-9, which is equivalent of the Russian S-300 surface-to-air missile, it did well, but certainly given its elongated geography of Pakistan and the fact that the Pakistani air bases, they are within 100 to 200 kilometers from the border, and all this is covered by the S-400 which India has, then certainly Pakistan would be looking at acquiring the Chinese HQ-19 long-range surface-to-air missiles, and reports are that the Chinese will be giving them. Now HQ-19, they are equivalent of the American THAAD system, which basically means that they'll be able to take on the IRBMs, intermediate range ballistic missiles with a range of 2000 kilometers. So these are the two key capabilities which will have an enormous effect on the battlefield between India and Pakistan. I don't want to go in further details. Now I want to move to the capabilities. And I cannot overemphasize the fact that in the modern war, capabilities is what will matter. And when we talk of capabilities, we are talking of the assets in the virtual domains, not in the physical domains. In the virtual domain of cyber, in the virtual domain of electromagnetic spectrum, in the form of electronic warfare, and in the space domain, the space capabilities. This is what will change the outcome of the war, a modern war. Let me just briefly talk about this. As far as electronic warfare is concerned, and now I don't have to emphasize upon this, I have said in my earlier videos that starting from 2019 Balakot air attacks, where the Pakistan Air Force showed a good control or a good knowledge of electronic warfare, they have come a long way. And today electronic warfare is central to the Pakistan Air Force operation, and electronic warfare has three core competencies. They are very important. One core competency is of electronic warfare what is called electronic intelligence. What this means is the capabilities to get the signals of the enemy radars, enemy communication systems, all electronic stuff, analyze that, which are then analyzed to know what exact weapons are there, with what capabilities and parameters they are there. So it's a huge thing. Electronic intelligence, which is done by electronic warfare, and a part of electronic intelligence is signal intelligence, where you also get the communication, the radio communications, which goes on the enemy side. Now the second is a very interesting capability, and that is when I said earlier that J-35A will have cyber and electronic warfare in its attack profile. What this means is that electronic warfare, it affects or it destroys the electronic signal, the electronic wave. As all should know that in atmosphere there are 7 waves. Collectively they are called the electromagnetic spectrum, and in these the 2 waves, one is the radio wave, which is used for military communication, microwaves usually used in satellites and radars. So the data and information which is there in the open atmosphere, in the wireless system, what we call, it travels through in the waves. Electronic warfare, what it does is it attacks the waves and creates a vulnerability there in the wave. Now once it creates a vulnerability, then there is a possibility of injecting in that vulnerability of the electronic wave a cyber weapon. You can inject a cyber weapon which can then travel to the signal into the computers, which is where the cyberspace exists, into the wireless systems and the computers. So this is how these two work together. Electronic warfare creates a vulnerability, and the cyber weapons can be injected there to then travel to the computers. What this means is that not only the Pakistan Air Force is good in electronic warfare, there is plenty that the Chinese would have shared with them about cyber weapons if they are giving them the J-35A, which is why there are reports that the Pakistani Air Force pilots are already in China doing the training there. And the third electronic warfare core competency everybody knows is about jamming and spoofing. We saw their jamming, what they could do in Operation Swift Retort in 2019. So these are the core competencies. So basically cyber and electronic warfare, they work together. And then as far as space is concerned, here once again the Chinese are helping the Pakistanis with their Beidou system. Beidou is perhaps today the best system, the constellation of satellites in the world. And they have also Yagon satellites, which one of the things they do is ELINT, which is electronic intelligence, picking up what I said, the electronic signal, sending them perhaps back to a ground station where they are fully analyzed to know what the enemy is doing. So you see, this is a big leap when you talk of capabilities, and that is why we heard from the Pakistan Air Force, Air Marshal Aurangzeb Ahmed, when he gave a briefing, comprehensive briefing to the international media on 8th of May, he spoke about a new war concept called multi-domain operations. Now, one of the requirements of a multi-domain operation which helps is to have integration and standardization of the capabilities and the platforms. What this means is that 80% today of the Pakistani Air Force assets, or rather all the assets of the Pakistan military, they are of Chinese origin. And this will go up, because the key thing in the multi-domain operation is really the Pakistan Air Force Link 17, which I have said earlier also that it combines the space-based capabilities again given by the Chinese, then the airborne assets, and then the ground assets and their fighters and their other combat aircrafts assets. All this is combined, and this is possible only if you have a high level of integration and standardization, and this is the precursor. First of all, it helps in two ways. It helps increase the situation awareness. What this means is that even their legacy Mirage aircraft, they can now, because of this digital ecosystem called multi-domain operation, which is backing the Mirage, their situation awareness, it increases by hundreds of kilometers. And the second is that this will help in closing the kill chain very fast for the Pakistan Air Force. And if I may add, this multi-domain operation is really a precursor to the joint integrated operations which the PLA today is doing, and that is called the informatized war. What this means is that you link right now, as far as Pakistan is concerned, they have multi-domain operations only for the Air Force. Then you link the other two services as well, and that is once again, I'm just talking ahead what the future holds. This is once again where the PLA will step in and help the Pakistan side. So the capabilities are important, and as I said, they are the basic things for working the multi-domain operation, which is at an entirely different war level. It is a concept of an entirely different level. Now, the next thing is, I've spoken about the war concept. Next is the training. Now, there is no secret that the pilot to aircraft ratio of Pakistan is better than the Indian side. I mean, the Indian side is 1.5. That means 1.5, which is on the Pakistan side it is 2.5 pilot per aircraft. On the Indian side, 1.5 pilot per aircraft. They are double this side, which means all this helps in a high intensity war, and especially in a war where there is a contestation. So they are better off here, and not only that, there is commonality of equipment. They have been doing joint trainings with the PLA, especially the PLAF and the Pakistan Air Force, the Shaheen exercises, which got intensified after August 2019. So they've been doing all this. So training is another thing, and they will be dependent a lot on training on the People's Liberation Army. Now the next thing is the finances. Now there are reports that China is happy to give 50% discount on the assets that they are selling to Pakistan. I don't believe that. I think that the Chinese will give whatever they give, the top of the line stuff, to Pakistan free of cost, because in any case they are getting a lot. They are getting two things in return. One is that without getting into a war themselves, their equipment is creating deterrence against the Western equipment. And the second thing is that this increases the arms sale of because they are operationally now validated, so the arms sales of the Chinese side, they increase. Now, that is about the finances. Now, there is something more that I want to talk very briefly, which is about information war. You see, information war is very important, but there are two requirements of an information war. I have said this earlier also, let me repeat it here. Information war, first of all, should be very close to the real war. You cannot just talk things like Karachi is captured or Islamabad is bombed. It doesn't make sense because it is so unreal. And then we saw during Operation Sindoor, people like former army officers calling Iranian leadership pigs. I mean, who does that? Iran today is the only country which stands tall in the Middle East. And Iran is a very important member of BRICS. So we heard all this. And the second requirement of an information war is that You can have disinformation, but you need to have information also. Something we saw that on the Pakistani side they did very well after the air battle, but on the Indian side we did not do that at all after the air battle. So you see, this is important because this is what the world sees, and based on that they make their own conclusions. Now the last thing is about the Pakistan army mobilization. Now you see, given again if their geography is disadvantaged for their air bases being close to the border, the advantage is that they have interior lines of communication. So their mobilization of the army can be much faster than the mobilization of the Indian army. In fact, that is something that the Pakistan army would be practicing and training now in this pause period as to how to bring everything, their reserves, their strike formations, their holding formations, everything together to war, to combat in about 48 hours to 72 hours. So all this will be going on in this pause period. But I still hope that the suggestion made by the Pakistan side is considered seriously by the Indian side, because what we need is, India also needs is, we need peace, and that is the basic requirement for development. And I'll give you just one example of this. You see now, as far as the 5th generation aircraft is concerned, there is talk going on that AMCA will happen, that AMCA will come into being. You see, AMCA is good idea, but considering the time that we are living in, it is not a realistic proposition. India has to go to get a 5th generation aircraft. AMCA cannot be that aircraft. Thank you so much.